Hello, my name is Eric Moore. I'm the host of the Testing and Intend video interview series. And today's interview is sponsored by ITEP, the International Test of English Proficiency. And I'd like to introduce my guest today, Dr. Deborah Crusan. And Deborah, a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, great. Well, a few questions for you here. What recent research in writing assessment has captured your interest?
Well, for a couple years now, writing assessment literacy has been sort of my go-to thing. I'm really interested in how I can help my teachers, my prospective teachers, teachers to be, and teachers who are already in the classroom, be assessment literate. What do they need to know about assessment? How can they be good assessors of their students' work, whether it's reading, writing, speaking, or listening? So that's the thing that I'm interested in the most, writing assessment literacy.
It sounds great. And I know that's an area a lot of people are not as interested in. A lot of teachers, they want to do all the other things sometimes, but they're not always as knowledgeable. And I think I was in the same boat at one point.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. What should every teacher or educator know about creating writing assessments, in your opinion?
So we have a new book. Todd Rucker and I have a new book, and it's called Linking Assignments to Assessments, a Guide for Teachers by the University of Michigan Press. I know I'm not supposed to be, it's not an advertisement, but in that book, what we talk about is this sort of marriage of assignment and assessment, that these two things are inextricably intertwined, right? And we really talk about when we create an assignment for our students, why are we doing that? And we're doing it because we want to find out something about what our students know, don't know, can do, or can't do. So that is an assessment, right? And in my mind, an assessment is it's to inform our teaching and to inform our students about what is important, right? What they need to know and what they need to be able to do. So if I know what my students can do or cannot do, then it informs my teaching so that I can take that information and create lessons or curriculum that furthers my students' ability. So that's the thing that I think teachers should know what to do. I think they should know how to create really good assignments and to create the rubrics or scoring guides simultaneously. And that those scoring guides should reflect exactly what I've asked my students to do in that assignment. I do, on a number of occasions, offer websites that like rubrics.com or Rubistar, things like that. And I tell my students that these are good places to start. They're like jumping off point, right? And there are some places online where you can actually pump in your own criteria, which is really cool, right? So, but what we have to learn is that canned rubrics don't work for all our students. So if we're asking them to do, for instance, if we're asking them to write a critique, what is involved in critique, right? Or if we're asking them to do, another kind of writing assignment, is that different if we're asking them to write a narrative essay, is a narrative essay different from a persuasive essay, right? Those kinds of things. So when we're scoring those things, first of all, the assignment should tell us exactly the criteria that the students need to fulfill. And then the rubric should have that exact criteria on it and how much, and whatever that's weighted as, whatever credit points, whatever they're going to get. And this should all be fronted. So when I'm going to give you an assignment, you know what the assignment is, what you have to do, what counts, what doesn't count, why it counts.
Oh, sounds great. Does it take a long time for for a lot of teachers or educators to learn that, to be able to do that well, or is it,
yeah, I think that I always use the example of a grammar assignment that I use in my TESOL grammar class. It's pretty involved. They have to collect data, both spoken and written data. They have to analyze that data and just sort of do a little calculation and categorization and figure out the top 3 errors in written and spoken discourse that interfere with communication. And then they have to create a unit plan that helps to, I hate the word remediate, but those issues, right? I have worked on that since I've taught that project for 23 years. I have worked on that rubric and the project to make it clearer for 23 years. And every year when I'm grading, I'm like, oh no, I forgot this. So then I add it to the rubric, or because I believe firmly that if it's not in the criteria and it's not on your scoring guide, you really can't hold your students responsible for that. I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I learned that as a young teacher when I told my students to write a paragraph. And the next class time they brought, and it was at a community college, they brought in their paragraphs. And I was so excited because everyone had done the assignment. And I got the paragraphs and I went home and I started to read them. And then I realized that I couldn't hold them responsible for anything because all I told them to do was write a paragraph. And they all did that. So that's when I learned that criteria is king, right? And it's very unfair for me to count whatever when I didn't tell you that I'm going to count it.
Oh, sure. And you're touching on issues of fairness here too.
Right. No, it's totally. That's where I land squarely in the fairness camp.
Oh, and that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. How or when does a lack of fairness typically occur?
Well, when you don't offer your students the full information, right? Mm-hmm. So let's take that grammar assignment, for instance. There's lots of steps to it, and we go through those steps very rigorously. And the reason I do this is because I always tell my students, I'm not here to fail you. I'm here to help you learn how to teach whatever, grammar to English learners, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you know what to teach them? Well, you got to find out what they do or do not know, right? So this is the way we do it. We go through these steps. And I take them through each step because most of them have never collected data before. They don't even know they're collecting data, right? So you explain all these things to them. We're collecting data. What's the data? Well, it's oral and written data. And then you're going to do your little tick marks. How many errors and what are those errors and how do they interfere with comprehensibility and how will you create materials to help the student not make that error anymore. Well, we know that's not going to happen all the time, right? But sure. So it's a semester long thing, and I show them at every turn. I use the word fairness. I use the word ethics to show them that, and I say to them, I'm modeling this kind of assessment for you because I want you to do the same thing in your class. I never want you to use assessment as a punishment. I never want you to give a pop quiz because all a pop quiz does is show who's boss in the classroom, right?
I've never thought about that way, but that's
yeah. I'm the teacher and I know you didn't read, so sucker, I'm going to give you a pop quiz and show you who's boss, right? What does that accomplish pedagogically? It accomplishes nothing. The only thing it accomplishes is, well, my students are going to turn away from me and not learn.
All right.
Right. So that's how I think about that. So I don't believe that my students are going to be teachers who are already teachers. I want them to know that they should not use assessment as a form of punishment. There's one reason to assess. The reason is to find out what your students do or do not know to inform your teaching, period.
That's a very simple lesson, just with the pop quiz. I think that explains it perfectly. Great. Well, my last question for you, and what are some other things educators can do to ensure fairness in their classroom assessments? Just
don't be a jerk, right? Don't be that teacher. I'm gonna show you who's boss by doing whatever, fill in the blanks. Be kind, be firm, but be fair. My students know exactly where they stand at all times. They know that this is due on a certain day. If someone's having a problem, there's a little wiggle room, but they always talk to me privately about what the problem is or the issue, right? I teach at a university that is lots and lots of blue collar, first generation students who have, some of them have 2 jobs, 3 jobs. They're working the midnight shift. They're trying to make a go of it. They have families, etc. So I try to work with them as much as I possibly can. Know your students. That's very important to me. Know your students and don't be a jerk.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate your time very much, and your comments are that's very, very interesting. So that's our Testing in 10 interview for August and September. And so Dr. Crusan, a great pleasure to speak with you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.